Good afternoon. My name is Paul Lynn. I'll be talking about contemplative ultra running. I will explain what that means in just a minute. Here's my problem statement. According to the Center for Disease Control, 39.8% of all Americans are obese, nearly 4 in 10. That affects over 93 million Americans. Hispanic and African Americans make up the highest ethnic proportions, according to the CDC. In 2018, 31% of Americans aged 18 to 24 are unfit for military service, as it just reported in Army Times, October of 2018. We'd see how this has national security implications, as many of the top generals of the United States are briefing Congress on this. So this is a big issue, but we're going to talk about how this has clinical implications in just a second. The ultramarathon has been around since the 1960s, when John F. Kennedy came into office and decided to put a real special emphasis on physical fitness for Americans. And a club up in the state of Maryland, a health club, decided to take up this 50-mile hike that he was beginning to require his military officers to do. He got the idea from Teddy Roosevelt, and the gentleman over on the left is Colonel Tuma. He was the first one to do it. He was a Marine colonel, and it became a very popular activity around the country. Leading from the top, his brother Robert F. Kennedy decided to do it. He did it. It needed to be done in under 20 hours. And he walked the 15 miles on a pair of leather shoes. Down the right-hand corner is our group of Boy Scouts that made the journey, and just ordinary Americans. This group was from California up at the top, but it was the birth of the JFK 50-mile ultramarathon race. That actually didn't start as an ultramarathon race, but just as the 50-mile hike, but turned into that, and it's the longest, as you can see, the oldest ultramarathon in the country today. Ultramarathoning has taken off since then. Several 100,000 runners a year are running ultramarathon races, and a lot more around the world. So these are staggering statistics that I just talked about, and what is endemic to the American population is the link between being sedentary and depression. The second part of the problem statement is where the research will mainly have its focus, that inactivity increases the risk of developing common conditions such as heart disease, diabetes, which might further the risk of developing depression. And so from a clinical standpoint, we're looking at the problem of physical inactivity, which leads to obesity, and then potentially depression and anxiety. So understanding contemplative ultra running, this is my thesis. Ultramarathon running is a contemplative practice with therapeutic benefits. So the word contemplative, it's an important word. It essentially talks about the religious or spiritual or ascetical discipline aspects of sport, which is connected to running and practicing something regularly, and doing this with the ultramarathon in particular. So Miriam Diaz-Gilbert, 2018, wrote a journal article, and she says that she's an accomplished seasoned ultramarathon runner. Ultra running has a distinct spiritual dimension that leads itself to solitude and reflection, and is a kind of embodied spirituality that I call ultra running spirituality. This particular picture here that I posted on the slide is at mile 25 of a 30-mile ultramarathon race that I ran in Denali State Park in Alaska, and it certainly felt the way Miriam Diaz-Gilbert has just expressed that. There's secular description of the word contemplative on practicing in sport towards ascetical understanding, reflects the Greek word askesis, which means simply practice, training, or exercise. And so thinking about it in a contemplative way, running uh, distances longer than 26.2, and that's what an ultra marathon is. Um, a distance greater than a marathon, any distance. Uh, this is what ultramarathon runners have said and are cited in journal articles. What a fantastic thing God has given me the privilege of doing for many, many miles. It's just God, the mountain, and me. Another person says, instead of a mantra, I say the rosary. It's easy to do with a Catholic background. It always gets me through. So we see the spiritual aspects that people are bringing in their spirituality and blending it with ultramarathoning, and ultramarathoning itself has contemplative parts to it. One particular part is this aspect of flow, where one becomes lost in oneself, kind of getting inside of a zone through the pain of the long distance journey. There's flow in mindfulness, which is measured. Uh, these researchers, Brick, McIntyre, and Campbell, have talked to ultramarathon runners and have said um, that they have found many ultramarathon runners use mindfulness to help them get through uh, that distance. Whether it's focusing on the nature or the things around them, the sense of awareness of mindfulness going on to take one's mind off of the pain. So this theory of transformative coping expresses this contemplative peace. One can get connected with God, higher power, self, community through the spiritual process. The studies acknowledge that there are benefits to well-being through spiritual practices. So one who incorporates spiritual practice into ultra marathon running as they do it and they recognize it, they will uh, have the opportunity to experience greater sense of well-being because it's a natural thing to do in the process of ultramarathon training and running. So there are benefits. And what are the benefits? Studies show that when ultra runners train and race in many of the natural settings, like I showed you that picture, there are potential benefits that have a correlation to ecotherapy, as ecotherapy is now being prescribed. Getting out into nature and experiencing the benefits of being out there that mitigate against depression, anxiety, and other kinds of things. There are studies that show both men and women benefit from this practice, ultra running, as it provides them with a secure sense of self-esteem, and they have a better feel about their bodies, and their bodies are healthier than the general population. And I'll talk more about that in a second, but just wanted to bring your attention to two books, Running with Mindfulness and Running is My Therapy. Both of them cite the benefits that mitigates against anxiety and depression and how to do it. The top reason why ultramarathon runners participate in this contemplative practice is achievement. And it's biologically wired into the brain's dopamine system to want to achieve, and that can be achieve all kinds of things. But setting up a goal in running more than just a marathon, but a ultra marathon distance, in the ultra runners who do this, a study just recently reported said 74% would not quit ultras if they knew it was bad for their health. I don't want to say they're addicted. There is some exercise addiction that could be a part of what a small percentage are doing, but it's linked to wanting to do it over and over, and it keeps them feeling good about themselves, both emotionally and physically. And studies show that though ultra running has inherent risks and is taxing on the body in the short term, long-term health benefits are associated with its practice. Say short-term, dehydration. There could be some kidney issues. If you're not taking the proper nutrition, cramping, heat stroke, being out there in the sun, things of that nature. But over 3 days or even a couple of weeks after ultramarathon, these uh, problems that surface from running long distance usually subside and things go back to normal. But the long-term benefits, as you can see out of this incredible longitudinal study, people don't have a problem with staying healthy. And 2.8 days of missed work compared to the general population, which is much, much more. Number one medical complaint from ultra runners is exercise-induced asthma and allergies, low rates of cardiovascular disease, cancer, diabetes. And so, compared with the general population, ultramarathon runners appear healthier and report fewer mistakes at work or school due to illness or injury. It also slows the aging process, as it was looked at ultra runners as they had their telomeres studied and just what's going on with genes and the aging process. The bottom line, if one is healthy, feels healthy, then emotional well-being is more likely and low mood risk is less likely. So here's the implications: clinical, social, political. We know the problems, the CDC statistics in minority populations rank much higher. So as I first take a look at race organizers and ultra runners, there's a sense of duty that I think we ought to have to extend an educational invitation to marginalized communities about the benefits of ultramarathon running. Let's get back to the 50-mile hike. And can we lead people to a healthier lifestyle by putting goals out there in reaching people who are struggling with their physical and mental health? Achilles International is one such volunteer organization that does great work along these lines with people who have physical disabilities, those who are blind or have lost limbs, and they partner with these people to help them run races, work their goals, and accomplish those things. Over in Scotland, their National Health Service in Shetland are now prescribing not running, but exercising in nature. Running could be a part of their ultra running. They do have a lot of ultra races in Scotland, and they do this to counteract the effects of depression, anxiety, and obesity. So getting back to the call of John F. Kennedy, President Kennedy. And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country might do for you, but ask what you can do for your country.